Good morning, afternoon, evening, and good night. I'm Tomo.
And I'm a giant radioactive monster destroying Tokyo.
And welcome back to Two Nerds Talk. We're taking a little bit of a break from talking about Warhammer to talk about Tokusatsu. Uh,
And mecha, somewhat.
yeah, so we're going to be talking Tokusatsu, which is Japanese term for superheroes, I believe.
Tokusatsu literally translates to something along to the effect of special effects show. So the idea is it's a movie or a TV show with a primary focus on special effects work, but it mostly gets referred to within the realms of stuff like the Godzilla movies or Super Sentai, which is the origin of Power Rangers. So, people in costumes fighting each other, usually with sets, lots of explosions, etc., etc., etc.
And because these bleed over so much with giant robots fighting each other, this video we're going to be mostly focusing on giant robots fighting monsters, if anything. Whereas this is going to be part one. Part two, we're probably going to include more mecha series. But for now, we're
Well, yeah,
going to look at the more
we're
of the
not we're not solely focusing on giant robots fighting uh, kaiju in our first part, but
true.
any mecha series we include in this part are going to be ones that involve the the mecha fighting kaiju.
Yeah. But
I should
with.
really clarify some terms here to help people out.
Yeah.
Kaiju is Japanese for strange beast and is usually used in terms of their giant monster movies. Um, One thing we're going to be referring to are the different eras of Tokusatsu. The eras are typically named after who the emperor is at the time. There are four eras: Showa, Heisei, Millennium, which is tied to the emperor, and Reiwa, which is the current one. Oh, and Super Sentai is where Power Rangers come from, just to make that clear, because that's going to come up.
With that said, let's jump into it with part one of Talking Tokusatsu. Shay, do you want to introduce our first guy?
Sure. Once upon a time, in the dangerous world that is 1970s Japan, there was an evil organization by the name of Shocker. Shocker were descendants of the Nazis and were hell bent on world domination. The way they did this is by kidnapping people and turning them into mutant cyborgs, combining animal characteristics with human DNA. One of these people kidnapped was a motorcycling college professor with an IQ of over 600 by the name of Takeshi Hongo. I'm not joking about that part. He was to be combined with the aspects of a grasshopper. However, while the transformation was complete, he was able to escape thanks to a scientist who turned against Shocker before the brainwashing could take place. Set free, he declared a one-man war against the forces of Shocker as the first Kamen Rider, which then spun out into a very, very long series created by the Toei company that still runs to this day.
Kamen Rider, or as some may know him in the West as Masked Rider, is kind of
Nobody knows him in the West.
fair enough. He's kind of one of the great granddaddies of Japanese superhero shows. Between him and Ultraman, who we're going to talk about later, they kind of inspired Super Sentai series and a lot of other similar shows. You could argue Sailor Moon and basically the entire shoujo genre was inspired by characters like Kamen Rider.
Super Sentai is actually made by the same company who made Kamen Rider, but they made Kamen Rider first.
Yeah.
Though he did not have success coming over in the West, Kamen Rider does predate Super Sentai and Power Rangers, though he does not predate Ultraman. Um,
So where would you want to
no,
rank him?
well, I've more recently gotten into Kamen Rider. It's not a series I have a lot of experience in, but I recently started watching the very first show, and I have awareness of some of the later ones. Kamen Rider, unlike a lot of the other shows we're talking, doesn't involve kaiju and giant monsters. His foes are called kaijin, which means like monster person, and generally his action takes place on the human level, and it's more of a martial arts sort of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Having watched it, Kamen Rider definitely stands out because it's a lot more brutal than its contemporaries. People die in Kamen Rider, and they sometimes die pretty bloodily. One recent episode I watched, like literally he catches the monster in midair and throws him at the ground, and the monster basically breaks his, like he slams face first into a boulder and dies.
Fantastic.
So the action's pretty fun. The theme song is a bop, and it has a great lasting legacy. Kamen Rider can be taken a lot more seriously than Super Sentai and Power Rangers. That said, Kamen Rider early on does suffer from being noticeably lower budget than stuff around it. I'm gonna A tier Kamen Rider.
All right.
Great legacy, but held back in the start by a budget, and from what I understand, held back a little later by Toei's obsession with having evil Kamen Riders.
I personally only watched a couple isolated episodes here and there, and being a kid in the 90s loving Power Rangers, I did watch a lot of Masked Rider. But yeah, I think Kamen Rider is confident, stands on his own. But yeah, A tier is a fair one.
Also really excited for Shin Kamen Rider.
Yeah, the modern day has been great for Toku. Moving on is our first anime. And in a post-apocalyptic world, humankind has lost their memories themselves. They continue to function on their own, but they continue to be able to do their jobs, do their tasks, but something is just missing from their minds and from their very souls. Why they're there, how they got there, is just unknown. What's also unknown is why there are such giant fighting machines called the Mega Deus. And one such pilot of a Mega Deus, and I really hate the way they say it as a Mega Deus in the English dub, is Roger Smith, a man who is known as a negotiator. And he pilots the Mega Deus in order to battle other Mega Deus users as well as giant monsters, often empowered by the shadowy evil organization who's gathering memories.
Paradigm Corporation.
Big O is one of my favorite mecha anime of all time. I don't care as much for the design of the mecha itself, but Big O as a general series is fantastic. The first half is very much Monster of the Week. The second is delving into the nature of humanity and what really constitutes a memory. Is like what constitutes a human. Is it the memories? Can you synthesize a human? Can a robot with artificial intelligence be considered human?
And a lot of the episodes that were Monster of the Week in the first season get callbacks in greater importance in the second season.
Yeah.
For those who've never watched Big O, the best way to describe it is the 90s Batman cartoon, but with giant monsters and robots and mecha instead of superheroes, and mixed with a healthy dosage of Blade Runner.
And I'm gonna put this. I want to put him in S. I love Big O.
I'm comfortable putting Big O in either S or A tier, so I guess we're putting an S. It is one of my favorite anime. One thing I really appreciate about Big O, and I know you don't appreciate this as much, is that the mechs and the monsters feel heavy. While it's an anime, a lot of the action is done in sort of the traditional Tokusatsu manner, where, you know, guys are big and stompy, they're ponderous, there's a lot of weight behind every movement. and many of them seem like they could be guys in a suit. But Big O has fantastic characters, fantastic music, fantastic art direction. It's really a show just about everyone should watch. One of the characters is among probably my favorite anime characters, Schwarzwald. And quite a few episodes are just some of my favorite anime episodes. Particularly the one very noirish one involving the police chief and his the mysterious woman from his memories, as well as the one where Big O has to punch a falling satellite.
Some of my personal standouts are surprisingly the Christmas episode. The very first episodes is a two-parter, and it does a great job establishing the characters. And there's an episode later on where the main character gets kidnapped by the joke side character, and there's just this one bit that's absolutely fantastic. I don't.
Yeah, that is a good episode.
I don't want to spoil any further. This is one I absolutely think everyone should watch.
By the way, one thing I think we should establish is that I want to rearrange. I want to have these arranged so that the closer they are left, the better they are. So, like, two things could be an S tier, but the one that's further on the left,
yep,
I would put superior over some others.
Yeah, that works for me. All right, next choice.
The next one is an obvious name to anyone with even a middling amount of interest in Tokusatsu, though not the toppest of tier in terms of national interest, which of course is because he was always following in the shadow of the progenitor of pretty much everything else. It is the guardian of the universe, the friend to all children, Gamera. He is really neat. He is filled with meat. We have been eating Gamera.
I've never seen a single Gamera movie. I don't really know a whole lot about Gamera, so why don't you tell us about what makes Gamera great?
I've seen every Gamera movie except for one of them, that being Gamera the Brave. I really need to get around to that. Gamera was started by the GATTAI company pretty much as a Godzilla ripoff. Specifically created in 1965, it was just their attempt to make a giant monster movie. What separates Gamera from Godzilla in the later ones is he has a bigger connection to humanity, in particular human children. A lot of the Gamera movies from there was a kid in the first one. The second one got really dark and grim and had no kids in it. And then from the third one onwards, they pretty much always intended to involve a child in some way, up until the Heisei era. So Gamera would often, there'd be two kids, he'd have to rescue them, the kids would be the main characters. This made Gamera really appeal to Japanese children in particular, and actually caused Godzilla to somewhat soften up in the later half of the 60s and 70s. Gamera is perhaps most well known for the Heisei trilogy, which came out in the 90s, which is very notable for being better than the Heisei Godzilla. Better than the Heisei Godzilla movies at the time, and some people consider them among the top kaiju movies ever made. That said, I'm going to do some damage to my kaiju credit here. I think the Heisei Gamera trilogy is very, very overrated.
Yeah, you don't generally like Heisei kaiju movies, do you?
Not in general. And okay, I like the second Heisei Gamera movie, Advent of Legion or Attack of Legion. But for me, the best Gamera movie is the second one, Gamera vs. Barugon, which is the one that has the very adult and dark storyline but very classic kaiju action. When people say that the Heisei Gamera movies are the best kaiju movies of all time, I'm like, okay, but Gojira exists, and Shin Godzilla, and even GMK, which was done by the same guy who directed the Heisei Gamera movies. The third one especially, I hate. Revenge of Virus, which a lot of people super love that one. Also going with that, I find the later Showa Gamera movies very hard to watch. After Gamera versus Gals, I pretty much have to watch it MST3K to keep my attention, unless it's Gamera versus Jiger. That one's not bad.
So it sounds like maybe a B tier.
I'm a B tier Gamera.
All right.
He's got interesting foes, but his movie quality is really not up to snuff for me to put him any higher. There's a very limited number of Gamera movies that I want to watch at any given time.
All right. Moving on. I'm going to introduce this one, but Shade's going to have a lot more to say on him. In the late 1945, Japan was at war with America. We all know the story. Due to rising tensions, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. America entered into a war, and then through the Manhattan Project, they developed nuclear weapons, dirty bombs, cruel bombs, as the Japanese emperor phrased them. So distraught by this weapon, Japan entered a spiral for several years, and with America looking over their media, they were kind of limited on what they could make. And eventually, two artists came forward and created two very different takes on what nuclear power represents the world. Astro Boy showed the power that nuclear power could present and what it could do for humanity, whereas Gojira showed the sheer destructive power of radiation of the nuclear bomb and the sheer destructive force that it presents to humanity. Godzilla is shown as a nearly indestructible, unstoppable force, tearing through every single city, every single army that stands against him. And only by a doctor creating an even more horrible, destructive weapon are they finally able to put down Godzilla for good.
But it would turn out that that was not the only Godzilla, leading to, I don't know, 30 or 40 more movies.
Which aren't necessarily always the same Godzilla. Not necessarily always the same motivation. But they have tapped into the destructive power of the nuke more than once.
What can be said about Godzilla that people, do not commonly know? He is the face of Tokusatsu. He is the origin, arguably. On Wikipedia, the poster for Gojira is the image for Tokusatsu. But the Godzilla franchise holds a very near and dear position to my heart. It's how I got into kaiju in general. I've loved it since I was a kid, and my admiration for it has only continued as an adult. And the thing that really helps Gojira stand out from many of his contemporaries is that you can get Godzilla movies that are fun sci-fi adventure, just a good action romp. You can get Godzilla movies aimed at kids, a good thing to put on a lazy Sunday for some young kids to inspire them. You can also get Godzilla movies that are high art, award-winning, greatest movies of all time. Especially the original, Shin Godzilla, GMK, and I'd even say Terror of Mechagodzilla.
I'm personally not a huge fan of GMK, but that's just me.
In either case, the versatility of the Godzilla series, he's a character he's been reinventing over the years, and that helps keep him fresh. You can get various versions of Godzilla, various origins, various motivations, various looks, various powers, and various moods. You can go from anything to, some more grounded, like the first Heisei Godzilla movie, to really far out there stuff. You can get the anime series Godzilla Singular Point, where he is a physics-warping, universe-destroying, theoretical, black hole abomination thing. Or you can get a moment where he saves the universe, the planet from King Ghidorah and dances. Godzilla Kaiju, I think, are consistently very high quality. There's very few I can think of that are like lame or bad looking, even if they're not to my taste. I understand the craft behind it. Godzilla launched so many important things in Tokusatsu. There's so many important names associated with him: Ishiro Honda, Eiji Tsuburaya, Akira Ifukube. It goes on. Even the actors involved. Just love the series.
Gojira
And
also
it's an enduring
pioneered.
legacy.
Gojira also pioneered a lot of techniques, like getting miniature or model cities to stomp around in. A lot of techniques are still being used to this day. And while I would say the quality is a lot more varying, I would say there's a lot of movies I'd consider bad. Godzilla as a franchise stands on its own, and I don't think we'd have Tokusatsu anywhere close, if not for how good so many Godzilla movies are.
There's a reason when people think giant monsters, Godzilla's often the first thing they think of. So,
Confident.
easy S tier, far to the left.
Yeah. All right. Shade.
Sometimes out there in the world, there are people who, whether this is true or not, perceive themselves as being perhaps downtrodden, perhaps bullied, perhaps not given the respect they deserve. And sometimes evil alien entities will take advantage of such people, will whisper in their ears dark promises, take the revenge against those who have wronged you, create the world you want to see. I can give you the power to make your monsters of vengeance come true and do what you desire. And in such cases, only one hyper agent stands in the way. That's right, we're talking about Gridman!
Baby Don Don. Gridman is an interesting Ultra series. From the start, it's very simple. It doesn't really ask you a whole lot. It's a bunch of kids. They collaborate together to make a computer that they call junk because it's made out of spare parts. They design in MS Paint or a not MS Paint their computer's guardian, and then after the main character earnestly wishes to help his brother who's in surgery and being attacked by a monster, the hyper agent comes from cyberspace, inhabits the body of Junk's protector, and becomes the Gridman.
Gridman is made by Tsuburaya Productions, which is the same company behind the much more well-known Ultraman series. And while they're not within canon each other, Gridman's not technically an Ultra. The two share a lot of DNA. Gridman's not that far off in many ways. But in many ways, he is his own thing. For one thing, Gridman does not do battle in the real world. Gridman fights in cyberspace. His battles take place in a computer world with digitized buildings, and he's not in a typical city like you'd see. And the kaiju he fights are not naturally recurrent phenomenon, but entities created by a human who, as mentioned, perceives themselves to be put down upon, and who are then given life by an alien entity of one kind or another. In the original series, I believe it was Condigifer?
Yes.
Digifer?
Condigifer.
Whereas in the anime series, SSS Gridman, it was Alexis Kerib.
Yeah. And let's just talk for a minute about the main villain. I believe his name's Takeshi.
Yes.
He is so hilariously petty. Like, he views himself as this downtrodden, like, you picture the incel stereotypes, it's not my fault the girls don't like me, it's, they're all just, insert slur, insert slur, insert slur. in reality, some of his angry retorts are in episode 1. He creates the first monster because he wanted to give a love letter to a girl in his class. She was very polite, waiting for him to stop dropping his spaghetti before her friends called her away. She was very nice and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have to go." He got angry because she dared to refuse his love letter that he never offered to her, and created the first monster. In a later episode, the guy got mad because he goes to the grocery store. A little boy, like a 4-year-old little boy, runs into him, drops his prepaid credit card that his mom gave him, and the guy was going to take it from him to teach him a lesson about watching himself. The boy runs off crying to his mom, who makes a very pointed comment about bullying small children. So he decides the problem is money, and creates a monster that would set up all the cash registers to first pay out giant payouts to the credit cards, but then when they spend all of the money, it was 100,000 yen, which is about $1,000, the cash registers processing the last payment would explode.
By contrast, the villain of the anime series, SS Gridman, is Akane Shinjo, who presents quite the contrast to Takeshi. Akane Shinjo at first seems a popular girl, just about everything going right. She's a huge fan of the Ultra series, and a bit of a slob when it comes to her home situation. But it doesn't particularly seem like anything's wrong with her. Yet still, she's popular and so forth, but still anytime somebody bothers her, she sends her kaiju after them. And what's interesting with Akane is that anyone her kaiju kills, they don't get wiped from history or whatever, but like the day after the attack, anyone killed is now rewritten that they have been killed for a very long time. There's a very early moment in the show where a girl who Akane gets killed, and when the characters go visit her dad the next day, he's like, "She died in a car crash back in middle school. What are you talking about?" Akane has more of a god complex going on, where even though she seems to have a fairly idyllic life, she wants a continually better one. And a big part of SSSS Gridman is about her deteriorating mental status, as Gridman continually foils her plots and plans, and her life isn't turning out exactly the way she planned.
I believe there was also something that Alexis was also basically vampirically leeching off of her willpower.
Likely. One thing we should mention, by the way, SSSS Gridman, whatever, sounds like a weird title, and it has a meaning in the show, but it is also a reference to the fact that Gridman got the Power Rangers treatment, much like Super Sentai did, and its American series was given the hilarious title of Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, cyber spelled with an S, which is pretty much very similar to Gridman, with the only exception that the kid, Gridman isn't his own entity fusing with the kid. Like, the kid just becomes a superhero when he goes in the spot. Also,
the villain is voiced by Tim Curry.
Yes, and there's also an Akane / Takeshi equivalent named Malcolm Frink.
So, I have a lot of fun watching Gridman. It is very I much more prefer the original Gridman over SSSS Gridman. I haven't personally watched Dyna Xenon, but I have a lot of fun watching the original Gridman series. Mostly because of just how petty the villain Takeshi is. The series itself is very standard fare. They go into the computer, they have a fight, they're getting beat up. Gridman uses his upgrades and defeats the enemy, and then heals everything. Whereas SSSS Gridman is very much again, kind of like embracing your humanity, embracing your failures, and acknowledging that the world is scary, but you do have to face it.
I am somewhat of a reverse opinion. I've seen only a few episodes of the original Gridman, where I've watched all of SSSS Gridman, and I started SSSS Dynazenon. I really, really, really enjoy SSSS Gridman, one of my favorite anime of all time. What holds back the original Gridman for me, and this is gonna sound petty and stupid, I kind of hate that the fights are all in cyberspace and not in actual cities.
You don't feel like the stakes are quite as high?
Yeah, and one thing I love about Tokusatsu is seeing the attention to detail put into the surrounding. Recent Ultraman series always have these great moments where they'll like shoot the fight through the window of one of the models, or like they'll have the camera like on the ground level and you can see the detail put on even the street level while watching the fight. And I love that. Whereas the Cyber City in Gridman looks like a bunch of like colored model sprues, like just spray painted blues and greens. And that kind of kills a lot of the enjoyment for me when, like, yeah, it's not in the real world, there's not people actually in danger directly. I feel like that kind of hurts it. I would put Gridman overall as either a high B or a low A.
Yeah, I was thinking a pretty decent B because I don't think the original Gridman is a good show. It's just hilariously silly, and I enjoy that. I didn't especially enjoy SSSS Gridman. I felt it was kind of too slow for what it was trying to be. And like I said, I haven't watched Giant Xenon. That said, I absolutely loved Grid Knight, or I can't remember what his name was before Grid Knight.
Anti.
I really liked Akane as a villain. I liked Anti. But
Alexis is deliciously evil.
Alexis is just hilariously, wonderfully over the top. But yeah, overall, like, I don't think Gridman is a fantastic show. It's a fun show, but I wouldn't say it's a good show.
So one last question before we move on, though. Do you have a favorite Gridman kaiju?
Not really. I don't feel like...
I like Anonymous from SSSS Gridman.
Which one is that?
It's the one that starts out like it's a weird pink, kind of cute, cuddly monster, and then Gridman kills it, but then like it splits open, and that second monster comes out, and it's the one that like moves around really weirdly and can like kind of defy gravity and moves.
Gotcha.
It's the second to last. It's the second to last monster.
Gotcha.
Do we want to put Gridman over Gamera?
No, I'd say they're about. I'd probably say they're probably about even. Because there is some really stellar Gamera, isn't there?
Yeah, Gamera versus Barugan.
Yeah,
I would say stellar, and like Gamera versus Legion,
whereas
Advent of Legion.
Yeah, whereas Gridman I'd say is consistently decent. Like, there's not really any good high points. There's not any really bad low points.
Well, except for the finale of SSSS.
Yes, because that's just pure hype. You know what?
Pure
yeah,
hype.
Let's put him up. All right, moving on. Back in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, people were looking for something to change their mind and look at elsewhere. And this is also the time where, freak shows and big, strange attractions were becoming a thing. Film was starting to get really recognized as a really amazing medium. So what better than to have a giant spectacle of an unknown monster from the far off oceans. A creature who seems like it could be tamed, but is far beyond anything humanity can control. A creature who falls in love with a woman and climbs the Empire State Building, at the time the largest freestanding building in the world. This is King Kong.
The original giant monster movie. We know this is Tokusatsu and so forth, and this is a very American thing that technically predates Tokusatsu. But you'd be kind of remiss if we were talking about giant monsters and giant series without bringing up King Kong.
Especially when we get to later series, we're going to talk about more than just Tokusatsu. We're gonna, also talk about mecha and other series like that.
Yes, the eighth wonder of the world, King Kong. Directed by Willis O'Brien. Wait. No, Willis O'Brien did the special effects. Marion C. Cooper directed. Oh man, I almost embarrassed myself there.
You almost had to give in your kaiju cred. Notably, Willis O'Brien pioneered stop motion animation with King Kong. While it wasn't the first movie to use it, there was the much earlier, of course, Lost World. King Kong really popularized it, and was one of the most convincing ways to bring a giant monster to life at the time. The original King Kong movie is iconic, and it's a movie I think holds up a lot today. The original King Kong is so actiony and adventure. The second they get in that island, like, it is non-stop go fun scenes right up all the way until the very end. Like, it is a relentless movie in sort of the best way. It is a timeless story. One thing with King Kong is it is such a timeless story that they seem to just keep on telling it. And
King Kong,
every single subsequent story has dated it.
Yes. It really took until Kong Skull Island for Kong to get more of his own original plot. Even when they crossed him over with Godzilla, King Kong vs. Godzilla, they referenced the plot of the original Kong. He has a weird attraction to a human girl, and he climbs the hilariously much smaller Diet Building, which is the Japanese equivalent of the Congress Building. As such, I feel like Kong gets a little staler on the overall franchise side. The first remake is kind of a boring, grim movie. Its sequel is hot garbage. And while the Peter Jackson King Kong's a good movie, it is not a movie I want to watch very often because it's 3 goddamn hours.
Yeah, I feel like while the original Godzilla was a masterpiece, and it took almost 70 years for a movie to come out that was as good as the original, if not better, I don't know if any King Kong movie has ever really captured the magic of the first one.
No, I don't think so. Also, 60 years.
Oh yeah, 2014, wasn't it?
2016 was Shin.
Okay.
So 54, 20. Anyways.
So I'd say high C or low B for King Kong.
Ooh, you're breaking my heart here. I would B tier, and I would put him above Gamera. Just because the original movie is so important. And the original King Kong vs. Godzilla is great. Godzilla vs. Kong, not so much. Kong Skull Island is also really good. That's the first original Kong story in a while. And the Vietnam theme was pretty fun. Oh, and King Kong's Escapes. That King Kong Escapes is a very funny, like a lazy Sunday movie. Good for kids.
Alright.
It's got Mechanic Kong, who predates Mecha Godzilla.
I love Tokusatsu sometimes. That sounds so stupid.
Yeah, Toho, after they made King Kong vs. Godzilla, still had the rights to King Kong for a while. So they were like, let's rush out another King Kong movie. So they made one based off of the King Kong cartoon going at the time, where there is an evil scientist by the name of Doctor Who is trying to mine element X, which is a radioactive element. So he builds a Mecha Kong, mine it out, but the radiation causes it to short circuit. So he goes with Plan B, which is brainwash the real King Kong to go up to the Arctic and mine out element X.
Oh, I love how so much Toku is just turn your brain off and enjoy the stupid.
Like I said, it's a very good, like, lazy Sunday, like, movie to throw on. It's not great. The Kong's terrible. But it is the origin of Gorosaurus.
I know Gorosaurus.
Yeah, he fought King Ghidorah and doesn't afraid of anything.
He's responsible for killing Ghidorah.
Well, he turned the tide of the battle.
Speaking of lazy Sundays, let's talk about the pinnacle of Saturday morning cartoons.
This is my intro I
I
do,
know.
right?
Yep.
All right. Well, I mean, there's really only one way to do this.
Living here in Jersey, fighting villains from afar. You gotta find first gear in your giant robot car. You dig giant robots. I dig giant robots. We dig giant robots. Chicks dig giant robots. Nice.
Megas XLR is our first 100% American cartoon series. Probably won't be our last. It is the pinnacle of silly Saturday morning cartoons. The main character, Coop, finds a giant robot and hooks his car up to the roof. And it's just a hot rod car, and then he spray paints the whole thing and screws around with the mechanics so that he's the only one who can pilot it.
The robot, incidentally, came from a future war humanity was waging against some alien named the Glorft. And the Glorft follow it back in time, as well as a future soldier named Kiva, who's quite horrified to find what Coop has done to the Megas.
And so it's a lot of, Kiva's a person out of time, having to adapt to modern society, trying to not have Megas just destroy the world as he screws around.
Or get destroyed.
Yeah. It's silly and over the top in all the best ways.
It's an example of a satire coming from a place of love. It pokes fun at a lot of the Tokusatsu and mecha anime traits, while also being but it's laughing with them, not at them. It's a very fun show, and sadly, it got canceled for low ratings, and Cartoon Network wrote it off as a tax write-off, which means you can pirate it guilt-free because they can't make money from it anymore.
So go watch Megas XLR. I think this is a confident S. It's a parody, but it's a parody done with love, and it's a really well done parody.
I'm leaning more towards A tier. Megas is great. I'm not sure it has the same level of art that makes me want to put it in S tier. I say A tier is great, but S tier is like transcendental.
Fair enough.
So. What's your favorite Megas episode?
The Sailor Moon parody episode.
Oh, that's a good one. Mine is the one where Coop finds the alien prison and thinks it's a video game and lets all of the aliens inside loose. So he has to fight a bunch of them.
Yeah, Megas is fun. I have a lot of fun watching Megas. It's not a very long show either. I think it's only 15 episodes.
26.
Yeah, so it's you can watch that in a couple weekends.
Yeah, really.
Moving on. Back in the 1980s, Haim Saban was a TV producer who was going around with VHS copies of this show he found in Japan that he wanted producers to pick up. He was convinced that if anybody gave it a chance, it would be the next big thing for kids. It featured people in biker suits fighting each other, then getting into giant robots and fighting monsters. Eventually, I believe it was Fox that ended up giving him the license for a season. But they had to have an original cast and a lot of slice of life stuff, which was popular at the time. This resulted in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers first airing in 1994 and becoming a massive cultural zeitgeist in the West. I'm willing to bet that if you're watching this video, you can still hear in your head, if not being able to list off the original series dinosaur transformations. That all being said, Power Rangers for the most part is not very good.
But they've got a power and a force that you've never seen before.
They have the ability to morph and even up the score, but the westernization of early Power Rangers is awful. Once they get into the suits and they're fighting and they're quipping, it's great. But yeah, the slice of life is not great. Subsequent series, they do a lot better with it, but it's still meh.
Yeah, Power Rangers, even as a kid, was not a thing I had a lot of attraction to, even as someone who was into Godzilla. Like, I even as a kid said I only cared about the last 5 minutes of a Power Rangers episode, because I was just there for the Zordon monster fight. And even then, the kaiju in Power Rangers are often ridiculous and very, very silly. And I feel like Power Rangers having an overall comical tone kind of contributes to the negative view of Tokusatsu in general the West has. It's not solely responsible. A lot of that falls on Godzilla vs. Gamera, or Godzilla vs. Megalon, wow. But Power Rangers almost feels a little disrespectful at times. And it's never something I super got into as a result. Which
I did.
I want to give.
I was one of the kids who grew up with Power Rangers. I loved Billy growing up. Like, he was my favorite Power Ranger. I also really liked Jason. Zeo was great. In Space was like amazing. Even when I grew older, I watched some series. But like, for every good series like SPD or RPM, there is a Lost Galaxy or a Mystic Force.
Oh, Mystic Force I hear is like the worst, isn't it?
No, it's not, but it's pretty bad.
Yeesh.
Mystic Force, actually, I was mentioning it to you earlier. We were talking about the better the Sentai, the worse the Power Rangers. Mystic Force directly adapted the Mystic Force Super Sentai. I can't remember what it was called, but was it Magi Ranger? Might be Magi Ranger. But
I'll look it up.
Yeah, it was not very good.
Another thing is even with someone who's like, oh, it is Magi Ranger. Even with only being interested in giant monster parts, the Megazords in the Power Rangers Kaiju are kind of so bulky. I don't think the fights are typically all that great.
No. So I think Power Rangers is going to be a nice confident C tier.
Yep.
Which is not to say I hate all Power Rangers. It's meh.
Well then, shall we move on?
We shall.
All right. Once upon a time in New York City in the 1960s, mild-mannered high school kid Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider and given the abilities of a spider. Shortly afterwards, his uncle would be killed in a robbery, and Spider-Man would realize that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. This is not that story. This is the story of Takuya Yamashiro, a similarly named hero and similarly looking hero, the one with the ability to also Leo Pardon, who got his powers from a UFO falling to the ground and battled against evil aliens. This is the emissary from hell, Spider-Man.
I have no idea how this licensing snafu came. I know there was like a 1960s Japanese Spider-Man show, but how they went from the Japanese Spider-Man show to Spider-Man, I will never understand.
It's quite the experience. Spider-Man came after Kamen Rider and was really early into the years Super Sentai. However, hilariously enough, a lot of the tropes you would associate with Super Sentai came from Spider-Man first. Many people think Power Rangers is Super Sentai and are like, oh, the Zords, they summon their mechs, transform robots and stuff. But the first two Super Sentai series did not have giant robots. You know what did? Spider-Man, Leopardon. And that proved to be so popular that Toei, who made Spider-Man, kept it ported over to Super Sentai.
Spider-Man is an interesting watch. It's another one where I would say it's not a very good show. But just the sheer hilarity of someone dressed up as Spider-Man jumping out of a roof panel, picking up an Uzi, and firing it at the table in front of a bunch of scientists to make them run in fear while saying, I am the emissary from hell, Spider-Man, is, it's something.
Yeah, it's, like, honestly, if it weren't for Spider-Man being in here, I don't feel like the show would have the same notoriety. But, like, being a Westerner and then knowing what you think Spider-Man is, and then watching this one, creates its own kind of very fun novelty, which is really the most the series has going for it. Although Spider-Man has had some fun reappearing in Spider-Man crossovers, which have been a treat, even if those storylines are not very good.
Which is a shame because there are some cool Spider-Man, but that's neither here nor there. Spider-Man, I think, is a C tier.
Yes, but is he a C tier we put above Power Rangers?
No, because there are some truly good Power Rangers. Spider-Man has the fact that he pioneered giant robots, and I think that's about it.
And the novelty.
Yeah. So, Shade, let me ask you something.
Okay.
What do you get when you take a guy who really, really loves Ultraman and tell him to make a mecha series?
Well, that depends. Is he also extremely depressed at the time?
Yes.
Okay. Then you get Ultraman Tiga.
You also get Neon Genesis Evangelion. Often regarded as one of the greatest anime of all time. I wouldn't agree, but that's neither here nor there. Evangelion tells the story of humanity fighting against attacking angels on Earth. And we're talking... I know the meme is kind of dead, but these are essentially biblically accurate angels. And
they are reality warping abominations with very strange appearances and very weird powers.
And for some reason that isn't explained for most of the series, only 15-year-old kids can pilot. 15-year-old orphan kids can pilot EVA units.
These EVA units are necessary. Are all protected by something known as an absolute terror field, or an AT field. A kind of force field in which they're almost invincible while within. However, EVA units can generate their own AT field. And when two AT fields overlap, they interfere with each other and allow the AT field users, I guess, to harm the other person.
So, Shade really likes Evangelion for a lot of the reasons I don't like Evangelion. I feel Evangelion, like, I don't generally go for Monster of the Week stuff, necessarily as much as Shade does. And that's what a lot of Evangelion is. Like, there's a background story that's kind of building up that really culminates in the final couple episodes. But until you get there, I'm just not, like, it was a slog for me to get to get through Evangelion. End of Evangelion, I felt was a great movie. Like, the final scene is just like, it's a trip. But yeah, I'm not a fan.
Comparatively, I like the Evangelion journey, but I don't care as much for the destination. I enjoy a lot of the episodes in the middle of the series. Particularly, Ramiel is my favorite angel. I love the Ramiel episodes. And Ramiel also got a lot better in the rebuilds. Rebuild Ramiel is great. One thing with Evangelion is it sort of has a reputation for being this pretentious sort of intellectual series. And the thing is, it's not as highbrow as people think. Westerners look at all this religious iconography with the crosses and the angels and so forth and think, this is some deep message about religion or something. In reality, Hideaki Anno was a huge Ultraman fan.
Big old nerd.
And Ultraman had a lot of Christian iconography in it because Eiji Tsuburaya, who created the series, was a very rare Japanese character. So, like, Ultraman's special attack is formed by him making a cross with his arms. Frequently, people would get crucified in Ultraman. Like, not in, like, the violent way. Like, an alien would send out a force field to trap Ultraman that happens to look like a cross. Really, a lot of the religious stuff in the Evangelion is just window dressing. I believe it's been said that the only reason they picked the name Evangelion was because it sounded cool. A lot of it like that, like the Lance of Longinus, the Dead Sea Scrolls, a lot of that just cool sounding window dressing.
Adam and Eve.
It's in reality. It's in reality more like an Ultraman, just
homage.
An Ultraman Monster of the Week show, just with really, if you're gonna go into anything about the psychology and the characterization than it is about that.
And there is a lot to say for that. Shinji's character is actually something that also frustrates me because he has a very clear arc and then he just like reverts on that arc and then comes back for the finale. Other characters have these arcs where, like, Asuka has a way better arc, I feel. Misato has a great arc, but then it just kind of ends.
And one particular problem is that Evangelion does not do a good job of balancing its characters. There are 3 Eva pilots, but 90% of the angel kills is done by Shade alone, which is a bit lame in my opinion.
And Rei is barely even a character.
Yeah, Rei is awful.
That said, Misato is the best girl, and I think Evangelion is a confident A tier.
Yeah, a lower A tier, because I would definitely put it below Cop and Mega Sex.
Yeah.
Also, can we slide Kamen Rider above Megas?
Okay.
I just feel like Kamen Rider has to have points for industry impact and longevity.
Okay.
And you sound very depressed about that one.
We'll see. I want to put Megas in S tier, so.
Fair enough.
No, it's fine. You're right. I love Megas. Moving on. We're going to move on before Shade can correct me on who best girl is.
I mean, no girl in Evangelion deserves to be best girl. Except
Misato.
Best girl is Ava Unit 1. Whoops, spoilers!
Now, Shade.
What? I know what.
Now. Let's watch it with the spoilers.
Snape kills Dumbledore.
Alright, moving on, Shade.
In the far off and distant year of 2020, a rift opens at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Or rather, has actually been open for a while. It first opened in 2020. But as a continuing problem, this rift has stood and every so often spits out weird alien giant creatures known as Kaiju. These monsters prove to be a relentless and persistent threat, and while the forces of able to initially fend them off with conventional forces and nuclear bombs, the price was too high to pay, and they realized it wasn't going to stop. So to defeat monsters, they created monsters of their own, which is a really very edgy statement for a very mostly fun series. We're talking about Pacific Rim.
Tonight, we are canceling the apocalypse.
Pacific Rim is a movie I remember getting extremely hyped for when it came out. To put you guys in some context, the last Godzilla movie was Final Wars in 2004, and it was called Final Wars. Some of us legitimately believed that was the last Godzilla movie we were ever going to get. The Gamera series was in hibernation, and us Westerners weren't really into the Ultra series, Kamen Rider at the time. All we maybe had was Power Rangers.
Kamen Rider Dragon Knight was airing around like 2008, 2009, but we don't talk about Kamen Rider Dragon Knight.
Yeah. So it was sort of a feeling of hopelessness as far as being a Western kaiju fan. Sure, there was Cloverfield, but screw that movie. So when Pacific Rim came out, I thought, this might be a last hurrah. And the original movie is, in my opinion, fantastically great. It's a wonderful send-up to mecha anime and kaiju series. Very original too. I like the monster designs and the Jaeger designs. There's a lot of artistry that went into this. It tells a good story about national cooperation and coming together in the face of an extreme existential threat. And then the sequel came out and sucked ass and nearly killed the franchise. Boy, was Uprising bad. And part of the thing was Uprising came out 5 years later, 2018, by which point Godzilla had revived itself, and we had already entered into what was sort of the kaiju renaissance. That said, there was then the animated series Pacific Rim The Black, which was a return to form, also good, not as good as the original, and the wider universe of Pacific Rim is good. It's just a damn shame that Uprising came out.
Yeah, so people were really excited because when the first Pacific Rim came out, they had the creature designer from like Pan's Labyrinth. I can't remember his name at the moment. Guillermo del Toro. So they had
he's the director.
Yeah, he was the director. So we had his creature designs. We had some great star-studded cast. Idris Elba was in that movie. What's that guy's name? The Hellboy.
Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman was a fun character. We had the guy from Always Sunny, and so it was for me it was a decent movie. I had fun watching it in theaters, but I've never been as much into Toku as Shade is.
And you weren't, especially not at the time.
Not at the time, especially, yeah.
At the time, that was like a love letter Tokusatsu fan.
Yeah, and at that point, I think the only Toku movies I'd seen were the TriStar 1998 Godzilla, and that might have been it.
Which isn't really Tokusatsu, but...
Yeah. Since then, obviously, I've watched far more movies, because I'm no longer a Philistine. I might watch Pacific Rim again someday. Maybe enjoy it more. But I like the robot designs. Growing up as a Power Rangers fan, I had more appreciation for the robot designs, while Shade was really into the kaiju.
I also like the Jaegers. Cherno Alpha is one of my favorite mechas.
Don't you have a fig of one of the monsters?
I have a fig of a couple of them monsters. And a couple Jaegers.
Yeah. So I didn't appreciate it as much as Shade did, but I did enjoy the movie well enough. I never bothered watching Uprising. I'm just like, I didn't especially love the first movie, so I'm okay not watching the sequel. Turned out to be for the best. And then I also didn't bother with The Black.
You should check out The Black. You might like The Black.
I might.
Although the CG animation on that one is choppy. It is low frame rate. Kind of distracting. If I was just going off of the first movie and The Black, this would be an A tier for me. but with the existence of Uprising, I can't put this higher than a B tier. I want to love it more, but also like I don't love everything about the original movie. It kind of annoys me that to me it was marketed as a team movie, and it's not.
No, not at all.
Two of the Jaegers are basically cannon fodder, and that really sucked to see happen. I wish it was more of a everyone team up thing, because I feel like that would tie in more national unity themes. Also, this is petty and stupid, but when you get into arguments about like, well, not arguments, but discussions online about, oh, what kaiju from this series versus kaiju from this series, or mecha from this series versus other series. Pacific Rim stuff has hilariously low stats.
Yeah, they're big, but not enormous.
Gypsy Danger like weighs less than an Abrams tank. It's like, yeah, they don't. Their is hilariously off.
Yeah. So yeah, I think a decent B tier. Above Gamma.
Yeah, I don't even think we. No.
All right. So yeah,
Uprising really drags it down, and Gamera has the legacy impact.
All right. Shade, do you want to introduce the next one, because I feel like I'll be better able to introduce the one after that.
All right. Picture this: you're a kaiju. You're stumbling your way through the wood. There's no one around, and the budget is down. Out of the corner of your eye, you spot him.
He's
following you.
About 50 meters back.
Suddenly he pulls out a cross spear and charges. He's gaining on you. Yes, we are talking about the insane murderer of kaiju, Redman.
So for those who aren't aware, Redman is a series of short videos, or short
5 minutes each.
5 minutes each. I believe it's made with discarded Ultra monsters and Ultra suits.
Yeah, so Subaraya Productions, who made Ultraman, made Redman to be a series on the cheap.
Yeah. And so it's all super, super low quality, super cheap, and it's just Redman finds a kaiju. Redman decides the kaiju is a threat to humanity, even if it's doing absolutely nothing. Redman brutalizes the kaiju. End of episode.
To put this in context, Redman does not fight in cities. Redman doesn't even fight in like particularly convincing forests. Redman fights basically all take place in rock, and it's very obvious that like these are normal sized people, even if the kaiju was a giant in the Ultra series it came from. These were shot super cheap. There's no really flashy special effects, and it's mostly just Redman and the kaiju wrestling each other. Oftentimes, the Ultraman kaiju being shown, it's after their suits have kind of decayed and they look.
The entire series,
kind of stumbling around.
Yeah, the entire series, I believe, is on YouTube for free via Subaraya.
It's 138 episodes,
and all of them are 5 minutes. But you don't even really need to watch all of them. Like, you can turn on any episode of Redman, and you don't need context. You don't need anything else. Turn on any episode of Redman, watch it, enjoy it. It's dumb, it's simple, and then you move on. But because he's a heartless sociopath, Redman gets his own tier.
And this isn't like a localized thing. Redman was described in the series as a peace-loving alien, but Japanese fans have nicknamed him Aka Torima, which means Red Phantom Killer. And Subaraya Productions even authorized an American comic book series based off Redman that plays into the fact that he's perceived as a insane serial killer. Redman stabs his monsters to death, decapitates them. It's very vicious and fun. something of him lives on. The Ultraman series, occasionally, the Ultra series will do these things called like Ultra Fights. A very notable one recently, Ultraman Z was a recent Ultraman that had the attack team in it had mecha they would pilot. One of the mecha they used was called Sevenger, who came from Ultraman Leo, I believe. Sevenger has a very derpy design, but after Z, people just kind of loved him because of how derpy but cool he was. So Tsuburaya made Sevenger Fight, which is basically Redman, but it's Sevenger instead. It's very campy, and it's very silly. They're even making fun of Redman. But, yeah, Redman's a meme. Even officially, he is a meme these days.
So he's got his own tier. If we were to give him a placing, I'd probably stick him in C tier. Because it's low budget, it's dumb, it's badly written. Like, it's not meant to be taken seriously.
It's low effort.
Yeah. It's a meme, like you said.
Yeah. It's 5 minutes of two guys in costumes throwing each other around. That's it. In a quarry.
Alright. Moving on. Going back to another one of the big granddaddies of Tokusatsu. Back in 1975, Kamen Rider was getting popular, and they wanted another series to kind of cash in on the popularity of Kamen Rider. But they didn't want to just necessarily have a single masked hero fighting off against a single kaijin at a time. So instead, Toei created Super Sentai. A series of heroes who would fight in suits and generally fight a lot of mooks alongside one monster. After the first couple series, and thanks to Spider-Man and the popularity of Leopardon, Sentai heroes went from having a signature vehicle. In the first series, it was a camper. In the second series, they all had really cool motorcycles. But after that, and it's become a staple since then, they all have giant mechs. And if you think Power Rangers, you're thinking Super Sentai, you're thinking like the giant mechs and the monsters of the week and the goofy, campy villains. Super Sentai is the daddy of Power Rangers. Anything that's good about Power Rangers was better in Super Sentai. Conversely, everything bad about Power Rangers is probably also bad in Super Sentai. For that reason, I don't know if it'll be much higher than Power Rangers, but Super Sentai is still pretty fun. If you've watched the original Mighty Morphin, you probably recognize the monsters and the characters in Zhu Ranger. Other notable series I'm aware of are Deca Ranger, which inspired SPD, and Go Kiger, which is pirates, and they have the other 33 Super Sentai gathering.
Damn, I was gonna make that joke.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shade.
I was gonna say we have so many kaiju, terrible kaiju here. It's a good thing we'll have backup once the other 33 Super Sentai assemble. That is a meme image we laugh at a lot.
Yeah.
Super Sentai has, and Power Rangers as a result, have a bit of a reputation for hilariously oversized crossover previous series. And unlike Kamen Rider or Ultraman, I don't think Super Sentai ever went on hiatus.
No, it's been going consistently since 1975.
Yeah, so there are the 47th Super Sentai is about, whereas comparatively, Kamen Rider had a break. Ultraman had a break. Godzilla has had several breaks.
Even Power Rangers
Super
has had breaks, though they're at season 29 of 21 different series.
Although from what I hear, Super Sentai has been a lot of trouble in recent seasons.
I believe it. There's only so many times you can rebrand the franchise.
I have never watched a Super Sentai. I kind of want to watch at least one, just to verify my Tokusatsu fandom card, but I don't have that high of an interest of watching the series overall. Kind of the same problems with Power Rangers in my perception, but at least sometimes it can be taken more seriously.
Not very often, though. Super Sentai, like Power Rangers, is not a very serious show.
No.
I've not watched a whole lot either. I have watched the 40th anniversary special, Go Kaiju versus Go Sager. I can't remember what the full title is. It's a long. Let me Go Kaiju versus Go Sager. 199 hero grade battle, and it had all of the previous series, as well as the villain from SPD and a couple other series, or not SPD, RPM, which is, I believe, Car Ranger. It was called in the original Super Sentai. That said, it's also way better than the absolute mess we got for Megaforce. Was the Power Rangers anniversary? This was their 25th anniversary. It was garbage. So, like I said, Super Sentai. If you like Super Sentai, like if you like Power Rangers, you'll love Super Sentai. If you don't, you probably still won't.
Well, we have one last entry to go over. And it's not that big of a surprise because we've referenced him a lot. Still, he deserves an important bit of recognition. After the success of Gojira, Eiji Tsuburaya, who was the special effects director of that movie, was able to gather his success to spin off his own company, Tsuburaya Production. And Toho, his bosses, were actually all happy to support him. They became early investors and let him borrow some of the early suits, or some of the Godzilla suits, to work on his show. Eiji Tsuburaya, being a special effects man, of course wanted to make a show focusing on special effects. With mystery and science fiction, this became Ultra Q, a sort of Twilight Zone but with kaiju show, which would follow a pilot / science fiction writer guy, and his comic relief co-pilot as they got into various kaiju, but also kind of Scooby-Doo-esque hijinks. Mystery of the week. The show was originally going to be called Unbalanced, but it was renamed Ultra Q due to the term Ultra C becoming popular with the Japanese Summer Olympics gymnastics team at the time. There's a whole long backstory on that. Ultra Q saw big success, and a big part of it was that Eiji Tsuburaya was able to get a really expensive piece of film equipment to make that show, to the point that the only other company in the world was Disney.
Competing with the mouse. That's a thing.
Yeah, I was astonished. I've been watching Ultra Q lately. Picture quality is amazingly good. However, after Ultra Q wrapped up, they wanted to follow up with another series. And this turned into an idea of, well, why don't we take the kaiju part, which is the most popular thing, and add a superhero to fight them. This became 1966's Ultraman, a hallmark of the Tokusatsu genre, one of the most consistent, creation of kaiju media, a TV show that has lasted to modern day, though with breaks, and just an inspiring hero. I think the only way we could really see it is in a super jet he comes from 1 billion miles away, from a distant planet land. Comes our hero, Ultraman. Da-da-da-da-dun. That's the end of the theme song in the English dub.
So, Ultraman is another one of the big granddaddy kaiju, not kaiju, Toku series. Kamen Rider was one martial artist in a mask fighting special effects. Gojira was all giant monsters versus giant monsters. Ultraman was one giant superhero fighting giant monsters. At no point is he small. And Power Rangers / Super Sentai was like the hybrid of all of them?
Ultraman is the origin of the Kyoda hero and the Henshin hero. A big thing with Ultraman as a series is that the Ultras, because each season would involve a different member of the Ultra species, would either merge with a human host or take on a human disguise, and would often embed themselves in what were called the attack teams, defense organizations, groups that were made to fight off aliens and kaiju. In the original Ultraman series, this was in the Japanese. Hilariously enough, in the Japanese, their name was the. Let me see if I can find this here. They don't have it. It was like the Special Science Search Party, but in the English dub and like subs, they renamed them to the Science Patrol, and that name caught on more.
That's hilarious.
But there are various. The Science Patrol are great. Okay, those characters are fun. Arashi, Ide, I love those guys. Anyways, the different Ultra series would have different attack teams. The Ultra Guard for the sequel series, Ultra 7. Ultraman Zet had Storage. There's been Matt. There's been Guys. There's been Zap Spacey. They're fun. But in their human hosts or human guises, whenever the kaiju show up, their hosts or their guises can use a special item. Ultraman had the Beta Capsule. 7 had these glasses he put on that I actually forget. The Ultra Eye, that's what it was. And they would transform into Ultraman and do battle. The Ultras are an enlightened species of alien who are light beings who can form into physical forms, who see it as their duty to defend the galaxy and to protect the less advanced races so that they can develop. It's a very positive sci-fi series. I'm gonna keep going because I assume you don't have too much to say.
I have nothing to say. I've never watched any Ultra series. This is like one of the very few Toku series I've never had a whole lot to say about. Interest in either?
Ultraman, I got a DVD box set of the entire original series. I think in the late 2000s, and I watched that religiously as a kid. I ate through all 39 episodes within like a week. And it's only been more recent years, I've started expanding. I've watched half of Ultra Q. I've watched Ultra 7. I've watched Ultraman Zet. I've watched the first Ultra Galaxy, I think it is. The one where it's the person who controls monsters. I've watched some of Ultraman Leo. And really, it's given me a very big appreciation. I didn't realize this before. Ultraman contributes just about as much to Kaiju and Tokusatsu as I'd say Godzilla. He has a very similar impact, and when comparing him to Kamen Rider and Super Sentai's contemporary, Ultraman has higher budget and much higher quality writing. There are some Ultraman series that could delve into some really heavy topics for what is ostensibly a kid's superhero show. The Jamila episode from the original Ultraman is a real standout. But they go into themes of like genocide, historic guilt, who you should decide on. Ultraman Zet had this whole theme about how far are you willing to take your need to feel safe. I was astonished. I was like, man, this could almost be a theme for like post 9/11 America, and it's in an Ultraman series. The kaiju are often great. There's very many memorable kaiju in Ultraman. And Saiyajin, aliens. Baltan's a favorite. Gomora, Ella King, King Joe. Alien Barossa is a more recent favorite. Just Zeton. Oh god, I love Ultraman. Dinosaur Tank!
Dinosaur Tank
Yeah,
is the one
Ultraman's-
thing I know. Like I know about the memes of Ultraman, and because it's a Godzilla suit really badly slapped onto tank treads.
Oh, it's not a Godzilla suit. It's an original costume.
Is it an original costume? I thought it was literally just Godzilla on tank treads,
No.
and you can still
You're
see the
thinking
dude's
of,
legs.
You're thinking of Jiras. Jiras is an Ultraman monster, which is Godzilla with a frill. And it's not at all subtle. But Dinosaur Tank is his own suit. His own glorious suit. Anyways.
So, judging by your fanboying, I'm guessing this is a confident S tier?
This is an S tier. This is an S tier above Big.
Ooh.
The thing is, like, Ultraman being headed by Eiji Tsuburaya and having the backing of Toho means it produces similar quality to the Godzilla series on a TV show, budget and in a shorter time frame. If I'm in between Godzilla movies, I'm watching Ultraman. It's a great series. I have fun watching it, and it's had a huge influence on the world of giant monster media. If you play a giant monster video game, you're of course going to see your Godzilla reference, but your Ultraman reference might not be far behind.
All right. Well, that about does it for this one. I don't think we should do a summary for this video because this is just gonna be part 1.
Yeah, that works for me. Because we're gonna add more stuff in later.
Yeah. So part 2, we're probably gonna have any major Toku series we missed here. Stuff like I don't know what the series are called in Japan, but Big Bad Beetleborgs, VR
Metal
Troopers,
Heroes.
Metal Heroes. There you
Metal
go.
Hero.
VR Troopers. We're gonna go into more Gundam series, series like Getter Robo. But we thought we're gonna do some of our favorite series, at least to start, and like some of the most notable, legendary series for the first part.
Yeah, and maybe we'll delineate out some of our existing stuff.
Mm-hmm. But for now, we're gonna leave you with this. Shay, do you have any parting words to leave us with?
Yes. History shows again and again how nature points out the folly of men. Go, go, Godzilla.
Good night, everybody.